Hi everyone. Today I want to show you how to add selected details back to stamped images that you have used the no-line coloring method with. This is inspired by my friend Maureen Wong, who's a real wizard with coming up with new ways to use the MISTI and the precise placement of images. And so what I wanted to show you today was how to color an image with no lines around the edge and then add important details back like faces. I find that when I'm coloring an animal or a human with no line coloring and I go to add back the eye detail or the face detail with a marker, I find that I don't like it and it never looks as good as the stamped image. So this solution is perfect. To begin with, I'm just going to put the stamp face down on the piece of paper I'll be stamping on and pick up my stamp with the lid. And what I'm doing here is just ensuring that I have the stamp in the right position on the card since I can't see through this one. It's a clean stamp. I'm going to stamp it onto the positioning sheet, put my cardstock back in there, and just make sure that it looks good, that it's not crooked. Etc. And I really like the way that looks, so that's fine. I actually don't need the positioning sheet anymore because I'm going to be working with the cardstock in the corner of the MISTI, so it's not going to go anywhere. And now I can go ahead and begin working on my image. So first I want to clean the darker ink off. So now I'm just going to stamp this image in a very light color. I like light colors for my no-line coloring technique. Normally I use a warmer color like Daffodil Delight, but this time I'm going to go ahead and use Soft Sky because my image is going to be mostly blue. So I'm going to go ahead and stamp the little bird in Soft Sky. And then I'm going to take my blend abilities. I'm using Soft Sky here. And I'll also be using the Night of Navy, Blendabilities, Crumb Cake, Cherry Cobbler, and the Blender pen. And I'm just going to start coloring this image. Now the reason that I wanted to color this little guy with markers is when you use your normal flicking motion that you use with the alcohol markers, you can get a great look of feathers on the bird, and that's what I wanted. So the way the artist has drawn this image, it's a very sketchy image. It has lots of lines that look like they might have been done in charcoal or pencil. It's very artistic. But what I wanted is a soft, feathery look instead. So you're not constrained by your design when you do the no-line coloring, or even the style of the drawing. So I'm taking the several different shades of blue and just making little flicking motions to look like feathers and coloring in this bird. Now, especially with animals, well, with people too, really, if you go to try to draw back in, because you'll see I'm coloring over his eye area, if you try to go draw that back in, you can get like that scary, evil bird look. You know what I'm talking about. You can turn a bird from an innocent little bird into a super scary bird if you get the eye wrong. And that's why I think that what Maureen did with adding facial details back by using the MISTI in the perfect placement was genius, because it's something, while it's a technique that I really, really love, no-line coloring, that's something that I'm very unhappy with when I try to do it on my own just with a pen after my image is completed. And after you've colored an image for 20 minutes or so, or sometimes I'm super slow, sometimes it takes me an hour to color an image. After I do that, if I mess it up with a pen, I am one very unhappy stamper. So this is really cool. And you'll notice that I'm not coloring his beak at all, because that's one of the details that I want to be sharp and crisp in contrast with my soft feathers and even the soft branch that I'm putting him on, or her. I guess he could be a her. I really wanted the beak and the eye to be details that stood out and were sharper than the soft feathery little bird, because in real life the beaks and the eyes do have more definition on a bird. Not that my crazy little bird looks like a real bird, but anyway, you know what I mean. So I don't even have to put any color down for the beak. Now I am just adding different colors on the branch. I added some cherry cobbler for the little berries, and I'm putting both grays and browns into the branch. So here's the magic part. I'm taking just a scrap of cardstock and a Midnight Muse marker, because what I want to do is I want to test and make sure that the tonal value and the light and dark all work with the marker that I've picked. I'm just using a regular Stamp and Write marker here. I want to make sure that that works with my image before I commit to stamping it. So I'm just going to ink up the sections that I want to be more detailed in Midnight Muse, and then I'm just going to put my colored image next to it and say, is that tonal value right? And it really is. I really like these colors together. That's why I went with the blue instead of a black. So now that I know it's going to be in the perfect place, I don't have to worry about it. Just stick my colored image back in there, re-ink up his beak and a couple of little neck feathers. There are a few little details that I wanted to add back. His feet. You can see that I didn't color his feet at all. And maybe just a little shadowing on his wings. But I don't want the majority of that sketchy outline to go back onto the bird. So I stamp it, and look, he's a bird again with a beak and an eye, and not something crazy that I drew that made him look like a psycho bird. So just to make it a tad bit darker, this is another great thing about the Misty. You know how sometimes as you're coloring, if you're using more than one area of a stamp and you're doing direct to stamp, they can sort of dry out and be a little bit uneven. But I could stamp this as many times as I want, and it would just get crisper and darker each time and not have any blurring from the image being in the wrong place. So it's so valuable. I just love it. Now what I'm going to do is take the same marker, and I'm just going to add shadows to the bottom of the berries. My berries are really not defined at all, and so this is going to give them more of that round look just by outlining just underneath each berry. And you can play with this as much as you want, add as much selective detail to the image as you like. Just make sure your cardstock is pushed all the way back into the corner so you're in exactly the right place every time. Here I'm going to add a little bit of shadow to the bottom of the branch that he's sitting on. That's another one that I left deliberately kind of fuzzy. And this gives it just a crisper look. And I think it really sharpens up this image and gives a good contrast between soft and sharp. So now this image is a lot smaller. And this is from Lean On Me. This is actually a retired stamp set. And I'm just going to take that little girl and stamp her. I thought it was so sweet. And you can see I did a little stamp surgery and cut the greeting away from that. I don't like my greetings and my stamps together. I already have her stamped on the imaging sheet, and I have my cardstock there, so I know it's going to be in the right place. And this time I am stamping her in yellow, so I know that's a little bit harder for you to see. But you can just imagine that yellow adds a nice warmth to images, even though it doesn't show up in your final image in no line coloring. It does add warmth underneath, sort of like underpaintings work when you're actually working with acrylic or oil paint. I'm using my Smoky Slate blendabilities to color her dress. I thought gray might be kind of fun because I would give a few little pops of color in her hair and in the sky behind her. And also, I'm just confess, I really love coloring with gray. I don't know what it is. I guess part of it is I really don't like just regular lead pencils. I love colored pencils. But these gray markers give me that beautiful feel of graphite. Or actually, it gives me the look of graphite without the feel of graphite that I don't really like. So I do enjoy coloring with gray. And I just go in a few times with the darker shades of markers and add a couple little areas that sort of look like pleats in her dress. I don't want this image to look super blended. I want it to look kind of have a more watercolor look than an alcohol marker look, and so I'm being a little bit looser with the way I'm putting the markers down. So now I'm using the nude blendability for her face and adding just a tiny bit of blush to give her some pink color on her skin, like she's been out in the sun, because I will be adding some sunshine. And then I'm adding Daffodil Delight for her hair and a little bit of crumb cake, so you can sort of see the gold come through a light brown hair. And you'll notice there's a little butterfly. You can barely see it here. There's a little butterfly that's part of this image, and I actually didn't omit it when I was stamping because I'm going to do a little funky background technique that'll just cover that up and have it blend in. So now I'm using the lightest Soft Sky just to create a little bit of blue behind her. And one way I like to do it, I did it out of order here, is I like to lay down just a little bit of the color lifter, or if you're using another marker, the colorless blender, a little bit away from the image, and then flick into that wet colorless blender ink, and that'll fade out your strokes a little bit better. Especially when I'm doing sky, I like to do that. So you'll see me do that all the way around the image. Put the colorless blender line first, and then go back and flick into it with the Soft Sky. Now another thing I like to do with sky is I like to feather out to a certain point, and then I like to add just little dots, just a little bit of pointillism around it. Because since I'm not coloring a full sky, it's obviously an abstract sky, I think this little extra bit of abstraction makes it kind of fun and playful. I'm going to come back and touch up some shadows on her legs and on the ground. I'm adding just a teeny bit of Old Olive and then some darker Old Olive to create a shadow for her, but I want the shadow to be pretty subtle. So I blend that back with the other Old Olive. And then I come into the sky and add just a teeny bit of Daffodil Delight. I always like either my sky to have part of the image colors in it, or for my image to have some of the sky color in it. Now for the fun part, I'm taking a Sahara Sand marker and testing out the face details for the selective stamping, just putting her eye and her mouth back because she looks a little freaky without an eye or a mouth. And it turns out the Sahara Sand was a little bit too light, so I ended up going with crumb cake for that. And you can see that the detail comes right back to her face, and it doesn't look like a crazy person drew it on there. It looks just like the artist intended, but it still has the fun soft lines of no line watercolor. So I hope you've enjoyed this. Thanks so much for watching.